For today, a paradox. What is grown-up fiction for children? Off the top of my head, I can think of two writers who have written grown-up fiction for children. I'm sure there are more. But the two writers that I'm thinking of are Tove Jansson and Neil Gaiman. In the best, or in the most childlike of their fiction, those two writers understand what a fairy tale or a parable or a simple cartoon looks, reads and feels like for children. And to give you an example, if you want to understand how a child feels when you're telling them a bedtime story, an old fairy tale, you have to imagine that you are locking this child into a room, into the darkness, with a collection of all our hereditary and partly genetic fears, dreams, wishes and hopes. If you tell your child an old fairy tale, you're telling your child all of these old ancestral memories. And if you tell it well, and if you use an old tale, a child will know all of this. If you tell them about the big bad wolf, the child will feel all the old, ancient fear of wolves that we've had in their little room in the dark. If you tell them of a tree that comes alive, this child will feel all this old knowledge and dark dreams that have infused this idea. The child will not think of a nice smiley tree that walks around and goes, "Would you like an apple, child?" No, this is what adults think children imagine. And this is not what children really imagine. Maybe there are some children who imagine that, if they're just fed with this very upbeat, happy and silly kind of story. But I think what children imagine is this darker, deeper sense of how we are connected, of how our minds work, of how our imaginations work. I know that's what it was like when I was a child, and when I was listening to stories. I could tap into that without knowing that I could. This deep shared knowledge of dreams, of symbols, of memories that weren't really mine at all, but I had a way to connect to that. And I think if you write good grown-up fiction for children, you do not lose this understanding. And so Tove Jansson, the series of the Moomins, is a perfect example for that, of a very deep and wise and still on the surface extremely simple sort of comic strip for children. And only as we grow up, through our memories of it, if we read them as children, we understand them. We understood them instinctively when we were children, but as we grow up we understand them on other deeper levels. And Neil Gaiman's fiction, the ones directed towards children, I think of Coraline or The Ocean at the End of the Lane, speaks to that deep, dark identification and association that children have with this more cruel and more frightening side of fairy tales. The idea of the stepmother, the wicked stepmother, becomes like some sort of mutant parasite that creeps into your own house and things like that. But this is good fiction for children, because it takes them serious, and children know when they're being taken seriously or not. Now, I'm not talking about toddlers. Of course you shouldn't give a toddler a scary picture of a wolf or show him Odin hanging from the tree. But as children grow, and as if you notice they have some kind of connection to this imaginative, to this dream world, then you should definitely expose them to this richer kind of fiction that understands them, that takes them seriously, and that treats them not as silly creatures with silly fears and dreams, but as intuitive beings that understand more than they know how to understand. And that's a shorter one for today, but just wanted to give that as an example. Search for good stories, read great stories, tell the best of stories. I'll talk to you some other time. Take care.